recently, not many people had ever heard of Cúcuta, my hometown in Colombia. It is a small border city that rarely makes the world news. But in February 2019, I woke up to discover it was suddenly at the center of world events. Refugees from Venezuela were flooding in. It was the biggest refugee crisis in Latin American history. It felt like Venezuela was collapsing. The world suddenly woke up. Politicians and celebrities came together, and my city was at the center of the storm.
Welcome to Candid Conversations. I'm your host, Scott Tallal, and today we're talking about The Crossing, which is one of the contenders for this year's Best Documentary Short Feature film. And our guests are the director, Juliana Penaranda-Loftus. Hola.
Hola, Scott.
We also have Victor Bautista, who is the Secretary of Border and Immigration Affairs for Colombia, dealing with this issue in particular. Hola.
Hola.
And we have Gaby Arellano, who is the exiled deputy from the Venezuelan National Assembly. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us. I want to talk first with Juliana, who produced and directed this. I watch a lot of news, and I've even been to San Antonio, just across the border from Cúcuta, and beyond the occasional story about U.S. relations with Venezuela, how is it that Sir Richard Branson knew about this and we didn't?
Well, there is a story behind all this. I found out that about the concert at the same time that the whole news found out. It was a big surprise for me too. My understanding from the behind the scenes is that a Colombian entrepreneur and Richard Branson got together and discussed this possibility of how to help Venezuela, and they came up with the idea of doing this concert.
Thank you for coming today. It's wonderful to see hundreds of thousands of people coming to the concert. We stand by a bridge. Today we'll be building bridges of hope for Venezuela. Venezuelans are suffering, and today, hopefully, on the back of this concert, we can start maybe getting supplies into Venezuela so that people are not suffering so much.
And what is the current situation along the border?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. I think Juliana has seen all the images and testimony that happened 2 years ago, and now the situation is much more critical. Because of the pandemic, everything is chaos. There's no official passing right now through the bridge. There's only can go irregularly through the countries because of the pandemic in Colombia. So I've said Victor on Venezuela's side, there's more chaos in public services. There's no electricity, food. There's no money, no gasoline, and this makes 2 years later change the condition of life of the regular citizens, not the ones that only live on the border, but live in the whole country. Has the number of Venezuelans that have been trying to leave the country. Now they are walking from the Venezuelan territory, in the middle of the country, to the borders. It's days and weeks walking, and they arrive in conditions that are much worse than they were 2 years ago because we don't have any combustibles and gas. Made it much more difficult. The frontier states in Venezuela right now are the most affected by COVID-19, and there's not a health system or a sanitary system with clean drinking water. And these conditions have made the COVID outbreak much worse, and it's much higher than what the government has said. They are not adjusting to the reality, but this is what we feel with the loss of all of our family members and loved ones. The situation in Venezuela is much more complex. The hunger is much higher, and the exodus is much higher every single day.
This is such an incredible burden in a town of 700,000 and a country of 50 million. At the time that the film was made a few years ago, it was 3 million people. Now I'm sure you have even more. How many is it? And how are you dealing with not just this influx, but also the fact that you're now dealing with the pandemic?
Sí, efectivamente.
Yes, effectively, this is a tragedy. As we were saying before, it's increasing rapidly. Is the migration crisis it evolves quickly. When we made a concert, there were 3 million of Venezuelans outside the territory in all South America. At this moment, we have about 5 million outside their country. Colombia has received the great majority of the population, 1,800,000 Venezuelans in this moment. We calculate that the speed in which they are leaving Venezuela, there are 30,000 every week only by the Cucuta point. We are going to arrive at 500,000 additional of immigrants, Venezuelan immigrants, little more than 2,300 immigrant Venezuela. That will be in Colombia, and approximately about 6 million or 7 million at the end of the year in all South America. This is going to be the greatest migration crisis in the world, and it has a special component. Many children, people, elderly people that are walking day after day going through the borders between Colombia and Venezuela.
Is there any risk that the situation in Venezuela, the situation along your border, can destabilize the situation in Colombia?
Claro que sí, yo creería.
Yes, indeed. I would believe that the pandemic COVID-19 will impact one of the countries with the weakest health system, and the hospital at the border report that they don't have medication, they don't have medical personnel, they are abandoning the health system, and regardless of health restriction, they are going for the irregular pathway. Hundreds of people are looking for medical assistance. Are panicking. The border is that today with the hospital red alert flag arrives to 100% without having the ability to take care of those population arriving to a crisis of that higher and greater dimension, more tragic that we can all can imagine. In a pandemic, we would not have see of this side, and it's very difficult to administer in that zone between Colombia and Venezuela.
Juliana, I know that you've had the opportunity to live in multiple countries. You're originally from Cucuta, and you're now living in the United States. And I find it really interesting to look at the difference, to see how Colombia has been so welcoming to these refugees and sympathetic to the refugees. You look at what's happening in Europe, and you certainly look at what's happening in the United States and the situation on the border and family separations. What do you think is the reason for Colombia being so welcoming? Is it the shared border, the language, the religion? Why are things so different there than in other places in the world?
Yes, Scott, I had the opportunity to live in Europe too. And I have been in Afghanistan too, filming. It was my first documentary. And the reason why is because Colombia and Venezuela have a story of brotherhood of centuries. And so to us, Venezuelans are seen not just like another neighbor, they're our brothers. And we all feel connected. It was, as I mentioned in the film, it brings beautiful memories to all of us, because every weekend it was just going to Venezuela. We will always come up with an excuse to go to Venezuela. No, the excuse was, oh, let's just go get gas for our parents when we were growing up. But when we were going and get gas, it was getting something exotic that we couldn't get in Cucuta, you know. It was impressive going to the supermarket in my childhood, because I remember all sort of different options that we have for chocolates and for cheeses and for hams, and it was so beautiful. So I have so many beautiful memories, and they also have beautiful memories because Cucuta is a commercial city. So Venezuelans would also come whenever they wanted to Colombia to get clothes and shoes. Cucuta is known for that. So it was a very active border, still active border, of course, because of all this, but it was a moment of happiness and exchange between both countries. And it was just happiness going from one place and for the other. So it's a very, a relationship, a very tight and close relationship between us.
Gaby, why do you think the Maduro regime is still able to keep control?
The main reason that sustains Maduro in power right now is he has the arms that Chavez left. It was a system where the armed forces of Venezuela and the military are responsible for the mafias that sustain Maduro. You can call it illegal mining and narco traffic. You can anything that is illegal. Maduro today is the head of a bunch of mafias that have been made richer through doing illegal actions. This is the only thing that sustains our dictator because the military forces support him, and those are the ones that have the control of the mafias more in the borders. They have worked together with groups that in the past made terror and sadness in Colombia. These irregular groups like guerrilla, FARC, ELN are in Venezuelan territory, especially on the border. These sustain the columns that allow Maduro to continue with his regime.
What do you think will happen if and when the regime falls?
One of the things that we particularly from 2018 forward, 2019 and this 2021, what we've talked about the international community is that the migratory crisis is not going to change from day to night. Let's say if we get our freedom back within an hour, Maduro is taken down, the military is in the constitutional order, the migration is not going to go back. This is not going to be simultaneous. This is going to be very slow because the biggest damage that they've done in Venezuela, not only because of the discomposition of the family, but this is also the public systems. We've studied that even if the dictatorship, which is the central control of the territory, takes order and gasoline and being able to understand and have all the hydraulics, electricity, everything we don't have anymore, all this inversion. And even if we have a plan that is based on these needs, this is going to take at least 5 or 10 years to be able to have the country with the minimum clean water, having gasoline and electricity for the country. The returning of Venezuelans is not going to be immediate, even if the dictatorship stops. These are the people that are going to come back, the people that are being followed, the politicians, but the regular migrants are not going to come back because we know that the longer it takes for the dictatorship to be taken down, the refugees and the migrants are making roots. Their children are growing and having relationships, and going back to the country is not going to be as easy as we think. This is something that since 2018 we have known, and we have talked about this in the international community. This is not going to be over. The crisis is not going to be over, even though the dictator is not in power. This is going to help the people who haven't left yet, but the people coming back, this is not going to take even 1 month. This is going to be years because the social services have collapsed and things that are different from the structure of the military. These people are in business with the mafia, with drugs and weapons. These are the people that right now are in charge of the territory, and it's going to take time, 5, 10, 15 years to be able to have a country that is completely legal and has its constitution.
I guess this is a question for both Gaby and Juliana. Do you think Venezuela will ever be the same?
I have a dream, like we all have. I have a dream of being able to film Gaby crossing the bridge back to Venezuela. And I know that day will come. And I will be able to film her going back with Victor, the 3 of us. It's an honor for me to have both of them here, because they really know the issues of both countries. They really have a deep understanding. So I'm lucky, and thank you so much for having this. One of the reasons why I made this film is to start this type of conversations. And this is I hope is just the beginning to have both of them here. I know they have known each other for a while, and they have shared so many experiences together. And this film is bringing us all again together. But I hope to film part 2, and part 2 is Victor and I walking back that bridge and together. So many things have connected us through those borders. And so I hope the answer is yes. And I hope that now that Gaby was saying that there is no way for media there to be out. So I feel a little bit more pressure now to get this film out there, and so that people know what's happening in the border.
I think this film documentary is very powerful because it takes away the numbers. We think about 5, 6, 7 millions of Venezuelans. The documentary puts a face and a name and the last name, and the documentary transmits of what the woman feels who was manipulated into being part of a mafia in Colombia, and this treatment of women and people. This has been seen all around the world. The most important thing I've seen when Juliana invited me to this is that we're taking away the numbers. We're actually giving a face and feelings and making people feel sensitive towards this subject, because we've seen we're in a pandemic, and this is something that, since the world has so many problems right now, might be forgotten. And I want to thank Juliana and everybody who is participating in this, because it rescues the visualization of what's going on in Venezuela. We are now higher than Syria in 2021. In Syria, there's a war, and in my country, there's not even any type of disasters. And there's more people that have left my country than the Syrians have gone to Europe. And this has never been seen in any type of contemporary and history in the world. And we're also the country that receives the less amount of help. And Colombia doesn't receive any type of help compared to the crises in Europe. Colombia doesn't even receive 10% of what they need to be able to attend people in the health sector and their basic necessities. This isn't only affecting the frontier and the border of Colombia, but this is affecting the whole country. And I think this documentary will be able to show all of this. This will help everybody know what's going on, because this is not going to end quickly. Even though we could get rid of our dictatorship, the country's not going to back to normal very fastly. So I think this documentary is very important to show everybody. Thank you, Juliana, and everybody. Show this to everybody. And we've done this in a language that is not our own, because it allows this to get to other countries and other parts of the world, to have this big impact that we want to, that is not only economic or political, but about social aspects.
You can see the passion behind Gaby. That was the passion that moved me when I saw her on that bridge, because it was so suddenly during the process of being a filmmaker. I'm so used to having a long developing process, and saying who is going to be, who I'm going to follow for the rest of these months or years. I just saw that woman on that bridge, because we have 3 bridges that connect to Venezuela from Cucuta. And I said, that's the woman. I want to follow her. And we were 2 cameras and my cell phone, so a 3rd camera with her. We have crossed that bridge so many times during our childhood, but it was just the moment when one of my camera people said, Juliana, I have been in war before. I can't go any further right now. I have kids. I have kids too. But I saw in Gaby so much passion when she said that this is the time, let's go. And it was just a second. I just saw her driving so much people towards that moment. And I had no other option that trust Gaby with my life. And I said, the world needs to hear what's happening here. And I just pulled my cell phone and I still remember, Gaby, when you were saying, go, 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 and everybody was moving forward. That was, I just want you to know that I trust you, because I believe in your cause and I believe in what you're doing for your country.
I'm going to tell something that happened, if you guys allow me to.
Of course.
When Juliana was filming this whole moment, I didn't know her. I met her weeks later. When she contacted me, she filmed many scenes at that moment. I didn't know that she was there because there are so many people. Weeks later, when I saw her and she showed me, I realized that many of the things that I lived, I didn't even remember them. And my adrenaline and my energy was so high about what was happening that day, the, long hours with Victor, 3 weeks. And I think if we slept 2 hours a day, it was a lot because the whole process, the whole world saw a concert. They didn't know everything was going on for this to happen. They didn't know how frustrating it was on the 23rd at night when we couldn't bring the food on the other side of the border. And we could see that all the media, international, was saying that we had weapons. The images and the videos that Juliana had, when Juliana showed me the images from Venezuela, where I was being accused, and Victor also, everybody that was on our side, that we had weapons in these trucks. The images of Juliana showed basically a timeline. What was in the trucks, it was just food and medicine. There wasn't any type of weapons, and this was the proof to be able to say today in the International Penal Court, Criminal Court, Maduro didn't allow food and medicines to come into our country, Venezuela. And this is what we really wanted. This was our plan. There was no other type of plan that included weapons. We just wanted to be able to bring food into our country because the people that are over here on our side, and we've had to leave our country. Sadly, one of our family member dies because we don't have enough medicine, food, because we don't have enough basics, drinking water. The pandemic around the world, washing your hands is a natural thing. Here in Venezuela, it's impossible to do. And when Juliana contacted me, I said, Gaby, we're going to do this too. Contact in other spaces. And I want to thank you so much. And I thank all of you so much. Everything that you guys can do, everybody that is behind this computer that can visualize the tragedy that's happening in my country and make people feel sensitivity towards my country, because what is happening in my country is something that can happen in any country in the world, because political models can end up in extreme hunger in any type of system all around the world.
Well, as we close, you have mentioned in one of your earlier answers the need for help. So what can viewers do to help?
Victor, since you're on the border, I would love to hear how we can help, because I'm very concerned. Colombia has been receiving so much, and what's coming is big. And in all honesty, I don't know how much longer my country is going to be able to be receiving this large number of immigrants. And I know they're doing everything they can, but we need help.
Every person that sees this documentary to think about what would occur if it was at the entrance of your city. There will be more than 1,200 people walking, of which 400 are children. And if those persons have children, and I believe that Juliana did in this documentary, to present children that they they're not afford about the system. They don't have any. It's not a fault about the conflicts, political conflicts of the system. Those children today that walk 1,000 kilometers, 700 kilometers, children, three children that does not even walk, that had to be carried out. There are mothers on. It's something that has not presentation in century 21, coming into century 21 with the tragedy of this dimension, with so many children suffering at that speed. I lived in Germany and Europe, and I know how difficult it was for the government to receive 80 immigrants or 50 immigrants from the Mediterranean or Africa in one day, but Colombia is receiving thousands and thousands every day. It's not every week, it's not every month. At this moment, there should be passing a border for 800, 1,000 immigrants. And those thousands of children, they need protection. They need international assistance that protects them. They need a civil society to tell them those errors from the older people, and somehow we're going to compensate, but it should not be in those conditions nowadays. Believe that here the international community had to react to the tragedy of the childhood in Venezuela and Colombian Venezuelan, because in Venezuela there's a lot of Colombian living still. And I believe the tragedy of the children is the first line of work, baseline that we had to work on, because they don't have, it's not their fault that any of the thing that is going on in here, besides a few meters away from where they are living right now.
The short film up for Best Short Documentary is called The Crossing. Our thanks today to all of our participants, the director and producer Juliana Penaranda-Loftus, along with Victor Bautista and Gaby Arellano. Thank you so much for joining us.